Good afternoon and welcome back to another ironic introduction to another video. This is part 1 of my Abyss of Legends exploration guide series. Essentially this is just for path planning. It's just a nice bird's eye view, a rough high level cover of the Abyss nodes and the champions and how you should think about your team. Essentially I have 2 spreadsheets here. The first one is just like rough categorizing the champions and how I place them for how you need to think about them, and then just champion examples that can handle those fights roughly. Like I said, this is very, very high level just to kind of give you like a rough idea. If you don't know what you're getting into, if you're new to the Abyss, you haven't really done a lot of research, this is a starting point to really just kind of look at. And the second spreadsheet I have here is my own personal path planning, the teams I brought at the top, the number of units I used. You can see here for path 1, I was really detailed with it. Path 2, I carried that over, and then by path 3, I just got super lazy and was like, hey, here's the champ I used. This is how many revives it cost me. Here's the total. And there are videos for all of these as well. I'll post a link to my Abyss of Legends playlist if you want to check out any of my Abyss of Legends videos. They're there if you want to use them as reference. Maybe it'll help you out. But as you can see here, paths 2 and 4 were my most expensive paths at above 8,000 units. And then paths 1, 3, and 5 were all roughly the similar cost for me, around 5,000 units. So from my own experience, I would say, they're very similar in difficulty, except for 2 and 4. And a big part of that is just kind of like my own play style. So that said, looking at path 1 first, this is what's deemed as the easiest path. And the reason for that is that if you have an Aegon, the simplicity of this path is very simple. Now, it is a lot of fights, and that's a big reason for the number of units there. But Aegon just cruises through so many of the fights, and with like Torch and Doom, etc., etc., it's a very simple path. But paths that kind of stand similarly to this are paths 2, which does have a lot more, node specific and like needs a special counters. But a lot of these double up with like Doom and Torch, etc. This path is not like too bad, especially if you have the skills. Path 3, which also has more specific counters, but notably the least amount. This is typically a path people will take if they don't want to bring Aegon, or they don't happen to have Aegon, because you can get around bringing alternative options. Path 4, often considered the hardest path. Yeah, we're not even going to touch that yet, but path 5. So paths 1, 2, 3, and 5 honestly can be done without Aegon if you're looking at a completion run. And I would make the argument that paths 1 and 5 are very similar in difficulty as far as fights go. What makes path 5 compete with path 1 is that the fights themselves are a lot more demanding. You have a lot more frustrating independent fights, but this path could arguably be considered easier than path 1 because it's not as Aegon reliant. You use Aegon for just a couple of fights and then the collector. So if you're missing Aegon, I really encourage you to take a look at paths 2 and paths 5, because path 1 is super Aegon centric. This path uses Aegon a lot, and if you don't have Aegon, you really want to evaluate your other options. That said, path 1 itself it can be categorized into playstyle, damage / non-specific champion fights, and here is the list for that. Essentially, you want to bring in big damage here and just punch your way through. There are other options for handling each of these fights. I'll go into more specifics on the fight-by-fight breakdown on part 2 of my guide videos, but that's here. For Moto, you specifically don't want to bring Aegon because shrugging off that Fate Seal will kill you. There is an Incinerate immune you have to have, which is Mephisto. Honestly, you can even use like a 4-star torch here. People have done it. The Mystic fights are essentially just like the Cosmic fights. You need to have that stagger, or you want to have that Mystic energy damage to blast through Captain Marvel movie. These 2 fights, Quake and Howard the Duck, can technically be done with anyone, but they're just strictly better if you have a heavy crit. And by heavy crit, I mean a high frequency critter. For Invisible Woman, she's better if you're constantly debuffing her, so you don't have to worry about the power stings, and even better if you're bleeding. So that's path 1. For path 2, we have, again, the playstyle / non-specific nodes here. That's Darkhawk, Luke Cage, Ghost, Iron Man, Infinity War, Joe Fixit, Taskmaster, Punisher 2099, Loki, and Aegon. Essentially, all of these fights you can punch your way through if needed. And again, there are fight-specific answers here that can maybe get you the one-shot, or some champs that are better than others. This list down here is very high level, but you know, these fights, there's not like a, oh, you have to have a specific counter. There's just, you could have a better counter. For not Aegon is the Dormammu Mordo. Again, if you shrug off that Fate Seal, you're SOL. You will just die. Heal reversal fights, you absolutely have to heal reversal. You cannot have heal block for the Deadpool Red. You have to have heal reversal. So we're talking about Torch. And you'll see down here, I put Torch and then apparently Cull Obsidian for that Deadpool Red. I have seen a 50 or 49% damage deal on this Deadpool Red with the Cull Obsidian. So maybe Cull Obsidian, a couple revives, and a handful of potions. You could push your way through. I do believe they were relying on max number of armor breaks plus Despair. Because if you just max out Despair, you don't have to worry about the healing on Deadpool Red. And then from there, Cull Obsidian just really damages his way through. It's not ideal, but if you don't want to bring a 4-star Torch in, that is an option. But 4-star Torch is also an option for this Deadpool Red. And Mr. Sinister, you could just use Void. For Korg, I just put Korg because, well, it's a Korg. You mainly need to just deal with Korg. And the best answer here is Doom. Magneto works pretty well because of his energy attacks. You can use Aegon. It's just trippy. Watch some guides there. Claire has energy attacks. She's not the greatest, but it is an option. Nick Fury supposedly works, and I know Ghost works as well. So that's mostly just dealing with Korg. Mostly the Thorns, mostly the Shrug Stun. For MODOK, you need persistent debuffs. This is because of the Power Stings. Nick Fury works really, really great here because of his unblockable and his bleeds. Corvus can theoretically work. It's not your greatest idea there. But if you have Corvus X Proxima Midnight, you can definitely work around with that. Magneto works really well because MODOK is considered a hashtag metal. Cull Obsidian can get through, and really good parry timing will save you a lot, especially if you're using the likes of Magneto and you're trying to build up to that SP2. Better for debuffs, i.e. Bleed, Invisible Woman. Of course, looking at Nick Fury, even the Resonate Mastery. Better with debuffs, i.e. Armor Break, is the Green Goblin. Now, Green Goblin, if you can get an Armor Break on him, you can get regular damage in. Otherwise, you're really, really reliant on the likes of like Nick Fury or Aegon plus Special 2, maybe even Magneto for some bleeds. Bleeds is the big damage there. I really, really like Nick Fury for that fight. Would recommend again. Incinerate Immune, you have a Mephisto on this path. Torch and Void are your go-tos there, and then standards are Mystics. Again, you just want the daggers mostly, so you don't have to worry too much about the unstoppable. And then better with crit Howard the Duck because he has 30 indestructible charges, so you really want to crit him down so you can get the most out of each life. Aegon's one of the go-tos there, but Corvus Glaive can actually do surprisingly well. For path 3, again, here are your damage non-specific node fights. Darkhawk, Luke Cage, Joe Fixit. Red Skull has an asterisk here, I'll talk about in a moment. Ghost and Karnak. All of these fights you can just punch your way through. Red Skull has an asterisk because you do want to actually bring like a proper answer for him, be it Aegon with SP2s, Cull Obsidians with just like a big damage phase once you push him to 2 bars, Corvus Glaive, Doom, Nick Fury, all with modified playstyles, because that Red Skull has some damage reduction that you really got to watch out for. Not Aegon, again, we have Dormammu and Mordo, got to worry about that Fate Seal, so you don't want to die to that. Heal Reversal is Old Man Logan. If you heal Reversal, this is a free one-shot, or at least very close to, so your standard heal reversal options for that are going to be Void and Torch. Those are your best options, at least at the moment. For Havoc, you have to face him twice on this path. That is the major challenge of path 3. You're looking at Willpower Mastery if you just want to use anyone, because you're going to be constantly having the plasma charges on you. So you just free healing and then you just punch him down. Otherwise, you're looking for like an easy clap. You got Warlock for the one shot. Lots of options for Havoc as long as you unlock Willpower. For Bishop, you just have to fight him once. Doom is a great option. Warlock is a great option. You can get him down with Aegon. It sucks, but you can do it. And Torch plus an SP2 actually works really well. You use the SP2 to stun, and then you let the Incinerates bring Bishop up to the point where he's just degenning, and then you just stall as much as possible, revive, and do it again. It's painful, not as painful as Aegon, but it's actually worked really well if you're not necessarily going for a one-shot, in case you don't happen to have Doom or Warlock. For Korg, you have to deal with Korg mechanics, so of course you need to bring Doom, Magneto, Aegon. All of these options down here work really well in order to get that extra damage through as well, either via having energy attack or modified playstyle. Korg is frustrating. This is a potentially really frustrating fight. Doom makes it so much easier. Would recommend. For the Mystics, we have Mystic fights. You have the Venom the Duck, the Hyperion, the Champion, and then the Champion again. These are pretty straightforward as long as you've got the staggers and the proper Mystic Champions to really deal with them. I'd say Hyperion might be the most frustrating if you don't have like a proper answer, because if you're not dealing with that power gain, you're going to get SP3'd and it's a bad time. Better with crit is Howard the Duck. He does have 30 indestructible charges, so you do want to have a crit champion just to knock those off so you can actually start dealing damage to him. Otherwise, it's gonna be a hot second, and you're gonna use a lot of your hit meter in order to actually start, you know, getting to a damage phase versus the Howard the Duck. After that, it's pretty much just a standard Howard the Duck fight. Turn off your sound. Next up, we have Path 4. Now, this is considered the hardest path, and I definitely agree. It's the most roster intensive, and you just kind of stuck choosing a bad matchup. But for fights that you can just punch your way through, we have Darkhawk, Luke Cage, another Darkhawk, Red Skull with an asterisk, Massacre with the parentheses asterisk, because it's a different response there, Omega Red, and Karnak. Now, for almost all of these fights, you can just punch your way through. There are better options, of course, always better options, but for Red Skull, you really want to bring like Cull Obsidian, Doom, Magneto, Nick Fury, Aegon plus SP2 in order to really get a good damage window in once you push him above 2 bars of power. And for Massacre, you really want to bring Aegon or Corvus Glaive. Essentially, you're looking for crit on block. That's like your biggest key, but it is theoretically possible, not theoretically, it is possible to take Massacre down with any champion and just hit into his block. It's just gonna suck. So keep that in mind. For not Aegon path, we're talking about Mordo, because Mordo has Fate Seal debuffs, and if you shrug it, you're going to take some big damage. So don't bring Aegon, you will literally just kill yourself. For heal reversal, you have Gladiator Hulk, and this is an asterisk because you can only heal reverse him down to the last 25%, so you need to finish him off with a damage over time champion, looking at Nick Fury, Magneto, Void, Aegon plus special 2. It's painful, but it's not hard. It's just painful. There is a Korg on this path, so you need a standard Korg response, be it Doom, Magneto, Aegon, Claire, Nick Fury, Ghost. Sorry, random back spasm. But other than that, it's really just a Korg. You need persistent debuffs for Yellow Jacket and MODOK. That is because they have power stings, and you do have to worry about that. For Yellow Jacket, I have an asterisk just because Nick Fury and Magneto work really well here. Would recommend. I do believe Aegon plus the Resonant Mastery can do this fight as well. So, you know, I don't have that listed, but it is something worth noting. I didn't list Resonant Mastery with him because mostly I put Aegon in here for MODOK. For Bishop, you really just need an answer for Bishop. Either Doom, Warlock, Aegon, and Pain. You can rough powerhouse your way through that fight. It's going to suck, but you can do it. And Torch with SP2. Now, if you're using Torch with SP2, it's actually really cool. You use the SP2 to stun. This is going to give you a period of time where Bishop is just degenerating, and then it's just a matter of stalling. You don't want him to throw a special because then he's going to stop degenning. So you just stall, revive, and do it again. And that's really where you get your damage from, is that big degen. Next up is better with debuffs, i.e. armor break. And do keep in mind this needs to be a defensive ability armor break because Killmonger has 100% reduced offensive ability accuracy for the attacker. Now you have to face Killmonger twice, so beware. I have Corvus and Magneto here. I think there are other options, but these are really the only two I can think of, at least at the moment. So yeah, it's a good time. I used Corvus. He's a lot easier. You can get way more damage with Magneto, but Corvus is just easier to play in my opinion. Incinerate Immune, there is a Mephisto and a Ghost Rider. Both of these, if you're not bringing in Incinerate Immune, you're just going to die to that damage over time. Torch, Void, and Torch, even a 4-star Torch. Note on the Ghost Rider is even though he got that update to be Incinerate Immune, he is not Incinerate Immune in Abyss of Legends. So if you're worried about that, don't. There is a Hyperion on this path. As long as you can deal with his power, you can honestly bring anyone, but standard mystics will apply, be it Doom, Sim Supreme, Voodoo, Longshot, maybe even a Magic if you're really desperate and you're looking for that extra one, or you could theoretically punch your way through with Aegon if you absolutely have to. As far as Poison and Bleed / Shrug, you have a Hood fight, which places Poison and Bleeds on you, so Aegon, Ghost, or Robots, and then Morningstar, you just need to have the Bleed immunity. Again, Robots, Aegon, and Ghost should work sufficiently here. I do think I just used Torch. I'm gonna be honest. So you could use Torch there as well. Maybe I don't remember honestly. I think I just used Torch. Yeah, anyways, better with crit. Without crit is Sim Supreme. Sim Supreme has, if you get 20 crits on him, you pretty much are just going to take a ton of damage. It's going to be a bad time. You can theoretically punch your way through with Aegon. Otherwise, use Torch or Void. These work really, really well, as well as Mastery changes. Not a fun fight if you're not using Torch, but actually a pretty fun fight if you're using Torch. And this is Path 4. The problem with Path 4 is that you have to choose a bad matchup. Even with Magneto being added, it's just rough. You're going to run into a bad matchup somewhere, and just be prepared for that. Mentally be prepared to drop 10 to 20 revives on a fight somewhere in this path. And once you've accepted that, you know, look around and see, hey, which one of these fights am I comfortable just absolutely suffering? And once you figure that out, it's actually not that bad, you know? I personally chose Gulk. This is the fight that I was just like, I'm going to suffer. And once I was through it, I felt a lot better about the path. Path 5. Arguably the second easiest path, maybe even the easiest. You have a ton of super easy damage slash non-specific nodes here. Iron Man Infinity War, Thor Rags, Aegon thing. Red Skull and Massacre here have asterisks on them because there's some specific notes there. Omega Red. Medusa can be technically done with anyone. There is an argument to use a Mystic here because she has that Cosmic Unstoppable, but you can just parry one-hit her, and other than that, you don't have to really worry about too much. So I felt like you could arguably fight her with anyone. Odds are you might be using Aegon for her if you're, you know, working on that exploration. And if you don't have Aegon, you might be using, like, I don't know, Nick Fury or Corvus Glaive or just maybe Doom, any Mystic you happen to bring. But you could theoretically punch your way through with anyone, just using parry one hit to deal with the Unstoppable timer and not, you know, triggering Enrage. For Red Skull, you do specifically want to use, like, Aegon, Corvus Glaive, Cull Obsidian, Nick Fury, Magneto, Doom, someone who can get a lot of damage off while maintaining power control or like really, really big burst. So you don't push Red Skull to an SP3, but you still keep him above 2 bars of power to get your proper damage in. And for Massacre, Aegon and Corvus Glaive have that crit on block, so they're just extra good for that fight because all of your damage is going to be coming from hitting into his block. For better with debuffs, especially bleed, is Invisible Woman. Of course, you can use Resonate Master here instead, and then anyone else, or Torch or Stealth Suit, but honestly, Nick Fury is just by far the best answer there. Don't be afraid to drop your L1s. There's a hero reversal fight here, multiple hero reversal fights. There's Gulk, Mr. Sinister, and Cable. Now, Gulk and Cable have notes, you know, some special exceptions. So Gulk, the first one is you need to finish him off with damage over time. Once he hits below 25% health, he goes heal, block, immune. So, or heal, reversal, immune. He gets like, he can't trigger the heal. Point is, can't heal reverse him. And when that happens, you know, you just gotta make sure that you have someone to actually properly deal damage because there's a bunch of damage reduction here that you have to worry about. Nick Fury works great, Aegon works great, Void works pretty well, Magneto and L3s works pretty well. Lots of options. Just make sure you have someone for that sub 25%, otherwise you'll get burned. And then for Cable, sub 25%, you can't rely on the heal reversal. Now, if you get a heal placed on Cable before he's below 25%, you can kill him off that way. It's not like he goes immune. It's just that his ability doesn't trigger the heal if he's below 25%. So you have to make sure you get the heal before he's below 25% and then properly heal reversal. Otherwise, you want like a power control champion like Doom or just heavy damage dealers and a pretty good amount of revives. For a not Aegon fight, you have Mordo. You just don't want to use Aegon because if you shrug the Fate Seal, you're going to take a bunch of damage. It's a bad time. Otherwise, you can use pretty much anyone else. I used Torch. For persistent debuffs, I have Yellow Jacket here. Nick Fury is one of the best options. Magneto works really, really well as long as you're parrying properly and not getting hit. Otherwise, like Aegon with Resonate Mastery, Namor even, lots of different options for this Yellow Jackets if you have the skills to, you know, time your parries, dex the L1s, push it to an L2 properly, etc., etc. For Bishop, you do want a like specific counter, Doom, Warlock, Aegon, plus a ton of revives if you're just punching your way through, and Torch with an SP2. The cool thing about Torch is that if you're using the SP2 to push through Bishop is that you just stun him and then you stall, because with the SP2 he will hit energy over 30. He's going to start degenning super fast, and you just want to keep him from using a special. Just stall. Really slow combos, parrying, hitting him over, charging heavy in the wall, whatever you got to do to keep him from launching a special, and then you just revive and do it again. Next up is the Incinerate Immune fight. You have to have someone to deal with Mephisto, Void, Torch, 4-star Torch, Better Without Crit is Sim Supreme. Obviously, you might be using Torch here or Void. Anyone who can just hit through. You might even consider Mastery changes if you don't want to have to worry about Dexterity. And then finally, for all of the paths, the Collector. So that's my rough high-level guide. This one's, I didn't get too specific because I'm going to be doing a fight-by-fight guide, path by path. And that's where I really want to cover all of those. And then again, my pre-plannings for the champions I brought in, if you really just want to copy paste who I brought, you'll get a rough idea of what it cost me at least. As always though, I hope this helps someone out, and I hope you enjoyed. Talk to y'all later. Peace.